want the slides to be useful after the talk is over. But basically, Tor is used for TCP connection. Since almost all of you have used it, you know it has limited DNS support. We use a subset of servers as directory authorities. They look at all the servers that are available. They take a snapshot. They say, this is the Tor network. From there, clients choose some servers. They build a circuit. And now you have an anonymous TCP connection. Part of this is that geographic diversity gives us security. If you build a circuit that goes from California to Iceland through Zimbabwe, exits through Germany, and you visit a site in, say, Taiwan, the Taiwanese only see one end of that. Someone monitoring you only sees the other. It's very difficult for someone to watch that entire circuit. This gives you some really good anonymity. It gives you location anonymity. It gives you identity anonymity. It gives you a whole bunch of great stuff. And depending on how you use the software, such as Firefox and Tor button used together, you actually have the ability to protect yourself in a way that you might not otherwise be able to. So in the case of Iran, we've seen a couple of people crop up in this space where we were happy that they wanted to help. Their hearts were in the right place, mostly. And they advocated single hop proxies because they worked. So here's how you set up a squid proxy, here's how you set up an open HTTP proxy, here's how you find it. Unfortunately, those types of systems are, as I referred to them before, I said that they work, and so people use them. The problem with that is that working in this context is actually working against you in some cases. So what did the Iranians say about that? They actually said, if we read this quote from the Iranian National Police Chief, that those who organize or issue appeals about opposition protests have committed a crime worse than those who take to the streets. And they say they're watching them. So, of course those proxies work. It would be fantastic for them to continue working too, because they provide a very valuable source of intelligence gathering. They are able to watch what people are doing, log them, build social networks. This is an extremely dangerous thing. So by using things that simply work, they may be working in ways that are unintentional for you or for the people that you're working with. So encouraging people to use something because it is safe faster, people have said, well, Tor is too slow. And the question I have to ask to them, especially in the cases of Iran, or in the case of someone here in the United States who might be a whistleblower against a large pharmaceutical corporation or against an oil company, or, I don't know, against Greenpeace. It doesn't really matter what. Depends on what your threat model is and what you're afraid that the responding party will do. I mean, when it comes down to it, the question might be, how fast do you want to die? And I think the answer should probably be very slowly, thank you very much. And so as a result, the trade-off of speed is almost always worth what you get, right? If you use an HTTP proxy, it allows someone to target you. If you use a simple one-hop proxy like anonymizer.com or something else like that, Anonymizer can say, you know, all these people coming from Iran are totally worth wiretapping, and we could like make some buddies with the CIA by just wiretapping all of them and like shipping that data over to them, right? So using a single hop proxy, even with a completely trusted administrator, is terrible because they are subject to wiretapping even if they don't know it. They've got a Cisco router upstream, they're totally screwed, right? They can't make those guarantees. And the users can't make the guarantee that they won't be targeted. And everywhere they go, they leave behind the IP address or the signatures of the network they've traveled through. So it's an extremely dangerous thing, I think, to use something that isn't a multi-hop network. So you might be familiar with the Billboard Liberation Front from the People's Republic of San Francisco. You have to ask yourself, right? I'm here criticizing, I'm saying like Iran does this kind of wiretapping, and I could talk about China, but let's face it, the United States is not different, except in one way. The information that's gathered is not being acted on today. But as Moxie so eloquently put it, what will happen in 20 years when someone compromises your PGP key? What will happen to the log files that tell a different story than the truth? And what happens when I get access to those log files in 10 years? Right? What if I put in some messages just waiting for year 20 to roll around? The thing about these types of messages being kept around is that they tell a truth that may not have ever occurred. And they may paint a story, or they may paint a picture that is not anywhere near the reality that you experienced. And it could also be that you just happened to look like it was your story, even if it was absolutely real and it did happen. So your IP address could rotate one day, and you might be associated with logs that are a criminal offense. And that's a kind of scary thing in a world with a statute of limitations that's quickly disappearing, right? So we're not really that different, right? We have to look to ourselves to this. I mean, the AT&T building at 2nd and Folsom in the United States is is just as bad in some regards as the wiretapping that has been happening in other countries. So I think that is something that is, in fact, a little scary, and I don't know what the solution to that is, because this is a very socially acceptable and reasonable thing. It's a set of trade-offs that, in some ways, we've been told that we accept and that we've chosen, when we haven't really chosen it. And in fact, it was a crime when it started, and it still is a crime now, but nothing is happening to prosecute the people that were involved. So one of the solutions we suggest, and this is how Tor works, is that Alice wants to talk to Bob. She talks through these relays. She picks a set. She encrypts them. Relay 1 knows who she is. Relay 3 knows where she's going, doesn't know it's a she, doesn't know where she is, doesn't know anything else. Relay 2 knows some subset of the other nodes, but doesn't know really anything else because it's encrypted. And this is what we call privacy by design. If you try to beat me up and I'm relay 1, all I can tell you is Alice was trying to use Tor. That's it. But I can't tell you anything else. And if I'm relay 3, you can beat me up and I can never reveal Alice. And this is really important because it means relay 3 can't say, okay, these are all Iranians. I mean, maybe they can tell because of the content of the conversation, but if someone uses a VPN over Tor, then it becomes very difficult. If someone uses SSH, if they use TLS and they're not being man in the middle by Moxie, then it's definitely the case that they have a better shot at not being targeted, right? And in fact, that's why we built the system this way. We say 3 hops is good because that's quantifiable. You can very clearly see the first, the second, and the third each have different roles. And adding more roles in the middle does not necessarily mean that something will not be able to track you. I mean, like, there's no way that adding 4 more hops is going to make that more secure, right? Because those 4 hops will still have the same properties as relay 2 in the middle. They'll have some idea about the subset of nodes, and ultimately, it might even be worse for you. It depends on how the traffic traverses the network. We really need more exit relays. And since this is a highly technical group of people, if you have a computer that's on all the time and it has a reasonable internet connection that is more than 14 kilobytes of data transiting available, running an exit relay is super useful. And in the United States, it's probably one of the most defensible things you can do. The Electronic Frontier Foundation has been looking for years for someone that's willing to have a squeaky clean record, and if they get in trouble, to call on them for help. I believe that offer still stands. You should check with them first. But it seems to be the case that it would be foolish to run this, for example, in Saudi, but probably fine to run it here in Boston. And in fact, I run somewhere between 10 and 15 Tor servers in 10 different countries around the world because I very clearly believe this. And I'm not willing to advocate that you do a thing that I myself wouldn't do. So if you want to help, this is a direct way that you can help. And there is some risk, but thanks to the DMCA, every time someone says, hey, you're committing a crime, you've shared this bodacious boobies.avi file through BitTorrent or something like that, you can say, well, the DMCA protects me. I am a network service provider, and I do not host that content. Every time I've ever gotten a DMCA takedown, I have responded with that letter, and I have never heard a single thing since for every single request. And I've been doing this for well over 5 years now. So I think your risk in the United States is about proportional. It's directly proportional to the amount of effort you want to put into it, but luckily for you, you are protected proportionally to your level of privilege in your society. So I think it's super useful to do this. There are other places where this is also the case. Canada is pretty good for running a relay. You don't have the same DMCA protection, but you have a different set of legal liabilities about file sharing, so that is very useful to you. Sweden is another place. The Pirate Party, has everyone here heard of the Pirate Party in Sweden? They're the 3rd largest political party in Sweden. They run a Tor exit server because they believe that secrecy of the post, they believe in freedom of speech and the ability to read and write and to think freely. Those are fundamental rights, and that's part of their actual platform. So their platform actually includes running a Tor exit server, right? So this is not just like a hacker thing where hackers just kind of run these servers. This is a real thing that lots of people are doing around the world because they want to improve society. Yep.
A question, you may have a slide coming up. What is Circumvention, one of the many tools today to keep track of the brothers that, the hops of pulling leg and track it back to you all immediately when the circuit is made?
So I'll explain how the circuit is built, and then this will be it'll be apparent. So here's the deal. All the servers, they have what are called descriptors.